Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the GW27 edition of the FPL School podcast. And with me today, I have my co-host Kevin, as always. And you have had a pretty good game week, but then you've had some pretty poor results in the FA Cup when it comes to your plans for the future, because you don't have your free hit, so you're not able to free hit in 29. But we'll get into that later. But first and foremost, your game week 26, you had a couple really nice things happening there. You did not go for Hwang, the Korean guy, but you're going for Son now this next game week, so you're already ahead of the curve. But yeah, how are you feeling in terms of FPL and in general? How's life going for you?
Yeah, I can't complain. I think it's just been a bad run of fixtures and sort of decisions in terms of player picks and injuries. So it's just been a amalgamation of bullshit. But Everton got some good news with their sort of appeal and that they were able to shave off some points and but now there's talks that potentially they'll shave off the points that they were able to save, which is stupid. Um, but generally speaking, pretty happy. And if you decide to go to my score,
Yep.
you'll be able to see something that I'm very happy about. And that is that, unfortunately, he's my vice captain, but still awesome that Jared Bowen scored his first career hat trick, I believe, and
Mm.
definitely his first hat trick for West Ham, which is really fun to be a part of history like that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that as well. Happy with Bowen as a West Ham fan, obviously seeing him score a hat trick. Didn't have him myself. I went for Hwang, who's now injured after injuring himself in the FA Cup. So not so good for me in terms of transfers in FPL. But I did tell you Bowen last week. He would be a decent option still. I said that in the videos last week, and you were obviously sort of forced to go with guys that play in Game 29. So Bowen was the standout pick this week, and you got the transfers just spot on, and captaincy for that matter. You went with Watkins as captain rather than Haaland, when most people went with Haaland, who only got 5 points. You went with Watkins, who got 9 points, which turned into 18 as your other new transfer. So 38 points out of your 62 points came from your two new signings, which is pretty amazing. So this game week could have gone so much worse for you if you had done the wrong transfers, but you ended up getting the two right players in. And yeah, you're looking pretty good now for Game 29, even without the free hit and even without all those other fixtures sort of not going your way. You're still looking pretty good for that game week. So yeah, I think you're in a pretty good spot. 62 points. Obviously, you were trying to make a comeback and get into higher positions in the table. It hasn't been the best season for you, but I think you can turn it around now, even without the chips that you've used already. I think you're in a decent position going forward. So, in general, you're gaming 26. Apart from the transfers, obviously, any other things that stood out to you? You obviously had a couple players that missed out. Some players that didn't start. De Bruyne and Estepinian. Richarlison wasn't even didn't even have a match, but you could have done a -8 to bring him out, but or sell someone else, but yeah, it's hard to see who you would sell anyway, because you want Porro, Richarlison, and Palmer for the next week, especially. And Pinnock might still get a game in Game 29, so I sort of understand why you would keep him as well. So, yeah, in general, what do you feel about your team and your score and this game week, apart from just the transfers, obviously, which were amazing?
I mean, yeah, I can't really complain getting a hat trick from one player. You spread it out, and like I would say 60, 70 points is always a good, like, sort of benchmark to have, unless it's like where everyone's getting returns, then obviously shit. But in like a regular game week like this, where it wasn't the most obvious people that went crazy, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And Bowen essentially got the points tally of two players, so. Yeah, you know what? I'm perfectly happy with that. Should I have had more balls to have gone Bowen over Watkins? No, because I think Watkins did a really good job at home as well, anyways, and Brentford were a bit more of a unknown commodity. So I think, generally speaking, to be able to say I almost got 40 points from two players is pretty good. So yeah, pretty positive vibes. Ready to tackle the next thing.
Yeah. So you basically managed to get a green arrow in a game week where it looked like you were going to be in pretty deep shit, because you had a lot of players missing and you had a lot of main players out still. Like, you don't have Saka,
Mm-hmm.
who's been a detriment to your rank lately, and he doesn't play in game 29 obviously. So it's probably a bit late to bring him in now. But yeah, you actually coped well with a week that was looking really bad for you, and that's due to your transfers. So yeah, all credit to you for this game week. Partly credit to me as well for recognizing Bowen is good, but you went away with the transfer. I did not, so you reaped the rewards, which is nice for you. Let's move on to Kimo, who sort of went with a more template route, just as I predicted last podcast. He went with the template moves. To be fair, I sort of did as well, but I'm just going to say I started the Hwang Hee-chan bandwagon. It's probably not the best to take credit for that now, but I was on that move way earlier than most people. But yeah, it didn't work out anyway, so probably shouldn't take credit for that. But either way, Kimo ended up with a similar score to you, but he had a better sort of entrance into the game week. Like, he had a better setup team for that game week. And he also had Branthwaite with 9 points, who obviously would have been nice for your team, but he also doesn't play in Game Week 29, so he's another player that you can't really bring in at this point of the season. But he got 9 points for Kimo. He also got Ake with 6 points as starter for Man City, getting the clean sheets for Man City. Foden, just like you, 11 points. Saka, like I mentioned, another double-digit haul from him. I think that's his 5th double-digit haul in the last 6 game weeks, which is pretty crazy. So that was really good for him. And then obviously Haaland captain Watkins, 9 points as well. So yeah, decent game week again for Kimo. The transfers sold Darwin and Jota, which were obvious moves. Bought Solanke and Hwang Hee-chan, who were also sort of obvious moves. I think I probably would have done the same in his shoes, most likely. But yeah, ended up being a decent game week for him as well. But yeah, looking at this team, any other things that stand out to you? And
Yeah, the thing that stands
players?
out to me the most is the fact that he doesn't have Bowen. What a bitch.
Yeah, doesn't have Jared Bowen, sadly. That's that
He's
could be
twice
said for most
he's twice the
managers.
player Saka is quite literally 20 points. Bowen. No, I'm just kidding. I love Saka. Don't even.
I'm here for it. You
But
can
that being
argue Bowen
said,
has had 3 better years than Saka the last 3 years. So
anyways, I think no, I think it was perfectly fine to go with these players. It's just a real shame that Hwang got injured and Solanke might be injured.
yeah,
It's a bit of a question mark to really know for sure what the situation is with him, but it's just unfortunate. I kind of now I feel like people understand how I felt when I brought in Isak and who was the midfielder that got injured? Uh, um, Elise.
yeah,
So like it was two perfectly fine, acceptable picks, but both got injured. So it's super unlucky. Like I can't even fault him for this. And what was it? Yeah, it's just we have warned him about Konsa.
yeah. Konsa apparently is back in training now. There was like a Aston Villa video from Twitter that he's back in training, so he might actually be back as well. But I don't know. Konsa is more type of a player you need for Game Week 29, which is something that you would need. But for Kimo, I'm not sure about Aston Villa defense. They keep conceding a lot of goals, so yeah, might be time to sell Konsa. He has Conor Bradley as well for Liverpool, who's going to play right back, at least right back, potentially right wing as well for Kimo, which would be amazing for him. But he played right back, I think, today for Liverpool in the cup. But yeah, I think Kimo also has a pretty good team. The Newcastle guys is a bit of a question mark. Playing Wolverhampton at home next game, going to be an interesting game. So we'll get to that as well and talk about that. Let's move on to the manager of the week this week, which is someone that got a score of 86 points without a single transfer made. Also with Bowen in the squad, just like you. Didn't go with Watkins captain though, still Haaland captain, so you gained a bit of points there compared to this person. Stones 6 points, Dawson 7 points, Branthwaite with a 9-pointer as well, and then Saka, Foden, Bowen, really nice triple up on midfield. This is the second week in a row where 4-3-3 has been the winning combination for the manager of the week as well, which is kind of interesting to see. Alfie Doughty for the double game week, ready for double game week 28 as well, not too bad, and Palmer as well coming off the bench. I'm pretty annoyed that I don't have Palmer in my own squad as well, and I'm going to have to make the decision between Palmer and Son myself, but you'll get to see that in the team selection video on Friday. Yeah, in the end, 86 points for this game week. Bowen doing most of the work compared to most other squads, apart from Dawson with 7 points and Stones with 6 points as well, which are kind of differential picks as well. Yeah, looking at this team, how do you rate it? Obviously, Bowen is there, Saka is there on top of Bowen, so you have the best of both worlds. You only need Salah now for the three best right wingers in the league. So, what do you think about the squad?
Yeah, a sincere lack of Spurs, which could be some interesting
Don't need Spurs.
omission, especially against Crystal Palace. And I reckon both Sons will all triple Son, John Son, and
Richarlison.
Richarlison will do pretty well in that game. So, well, I don't actually know if Brendan Johnson's injured or not, but uh, I think the lack of Spurs might be the one concerning spot, I guess. But yeah, I really like it, especially the addition of Ballon Dawson as well. So that's fun.
Yeah, Von Dawson is
Even though if
amazing.
he had gone with a certain left winger named Ait Nouri, then he would have gotten even more points.
Yeah, and I know how that feels because I have Aitnori myself, so happy with that. But Von Dawson, great pick as well. He's going to score a couple goals at some point. So yeah, not the worst player to have either. Again, it's a squad with Trippier and Gordon, and I'm wondering what you think about these Newcastle guys now going forward, because they don't play in Game Week 29 either. They almost got a fixture in Game Week 29 because they almost got knocked out by Blackburn in the Cup, of all teams. But they keep conceding a lot of goals. So I don't know about Trippier, and Gordon has been a bit up and down. Harvey Barnes is back now, but he's still really, really good at home, playing Wolves at home in this next fixture. So we're going to get to Gordon when it comes to the plans as well, but just your first thoughts on Newcastle players currently.
Oh my God, I love Harvey Barnes. Don't get me wrong, but he had a fucking shocker in the cup game. Like, ugh, like that was no bueno, my friends. But Harvey Barnes is lethal. Just the positions that he gets himself into in games, it's honestly remarkable. I think his positioning is amongst some of the best in the Prem. Seriously, I think he's just that good at running into the right channels and knowing when a rebound will be likely and all this type of stuff. So if Harvey Barnes gets regular play time, I would definitely give him a shout. I think he is an exceptional talent. It's just a shame he had one of the worst FA Cup matches I've ever seen in my life. It was genuinely shocking. I did not understand anything he was doing. And if I'm not mistaken, he missed the penalty in the shootout, right?
Yeah, I did, but they still went through at least. So
Yeah,
yeah,
of course. But like, I it's not a great thing for you to like to experience in your first real comeback game and all this type of stuff where you're expected to not be exactly where you were, but at least much better showing than what he showed. But I still think he's wonderful. I still think Isak, if he's fit, is crazy good, especially with Wilson, who just randomly just runs onto the pitch and gets injured. So I think there are definitely some crazy fun. Trippier, obviously, Fabian Schär, who has looked pretty good. Sven Botman, well, except for the own goal when Twitter originally wrote Botman goal, and I was like, holy shit, what? And it was just like, no,
own
sorry,
goal.
Botman own goal. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes much more sense.
Yeah. What about the likes of Trippier and Gordon? Do you think those guys are viable picks going forward, or would you look to sell them if you had them yourself?
Gordon is their messiah, so I think regardless of everything, Gordon will continue to play.
Yeah.
I don't think Almiron has sort of um, made himself the like must play right winger. So I think we could see either Gordon or Barnes play left wing, right wing in that regards and
Yeah.
swap around. I don't think Almiron has been. I think he's been consistently decent, but not like has to be a starter. Gordon has shown, at least in home games, he has to start.
Yeah. We're going to have a bit of a discussion towards the end of the podcast as well, if he has to start in FPL as well, because there are a lot of good attacking players this week. So we'll get to talk about that at the end of the podcast. Let's move on to the prediction results from last game week. And once again, I'm actually doing quite well and gaining a little bit of ground on you. You still have a sizable lead when it comes to correct results, but when it comes to correct scorelines, I grew my lead to one more because I got the Brighton Everton result correct with 1-1 there. So Heartbreak both for you as an Everton fan, seeing Luis Dunk score, and also heartbreak for me as a Jared Bramford owner, seeing him go from 15 to 9 points with the goal from Dunk there. But at least it brought me the joy of getting the correct scoreline in that game. So 6 correct results for me, 1 correct scoreline, 4 correct results for you, 0 correct scorelines for you this game week, which means that we have a total of, you have 135 correct results this season, I have 117. But when it comes to correct scorelines, I have 21 and you have 18. Just looking at these fixtures, you had 4 of them right, 4 of them wrong, or 3 of them wrong. Four of each right or wrong. What stood out to you this game week in general?
That I backed Burnley, which was just me being stupid.
Yeah, 1-1 Palace Burnley.
Yeah. Obviously, Man United fucking it up at home to Fulham. Marco Silva, um,
Nemesis.
my nemesis, but Pride of Nigeria. I love that Iwobi scored the winner, so fuck United. Other than that, yeah, I don't think anything really surprised me. I'm just annoyed at myself that I didn't back West Ham to win when I normally do back them to win at home, and especially against Brentford, who have been pretty inconsistent. So even with Ivan Toney back, it seems like they can't handle the pressure. Other than that, yeah, can't complain. I thought the Everton result was fair.
Yeah.
And I also think it was fair for me to have proposed a win for us because we looked really good in the game. So, and had a very late lead and then lost our lead so late on that it very much could have been a maybe not a correct result, but it would have been or correct scoreline, but it would have been a correct result. So, a
Yeah.
bit frustrating. And everything else, yeah, happy with everything. Sort of went as planned because 4 of them were correct. But yeah, I shouldn't have been so out there with the Crystal Palace Burnley thing because uh, I just kind of wanted Crystal Palace to lose points. I don't know why.
Fair enough. They ended up being 3-0 winners in that game. Burnley are just absolutely terrible. I don't know who would you rather face at this moment, Burnley or Sheffield United, because I think both are just awful. What do you think?
The connection broke exactly as you said that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Burnley looked absolutely atrocious. I think they look potentially even worse than Sheffield United. I'm just curious what you think. Which team would you rather face currently out of those two teams?
As an Everton fan, neither because I think we suck. But just
Or
kidding.
in FPL, who would you rather target, for example? Both.
Neither is neither an option because I think both are shit, but I think Sheffield United have shown much more signs of life than and FPL relevancy like McAtee and these sort of players have been more exciting than can you even name FPL assets that have done well for Burnley?
Fofana is the only one. It's looking
Yeah,
all
and
right.
he's great, but we can't pick him with all the strikers that are available.
No.
So realistically, you would maybe target neither, but if you were to target one of them, you would target Sheffield United.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah, you also mentioned West Ham Brentford. I was surprised to see the result because Brentford always beat West Ham, but this season, West Ham have beaten both Brighton and now Brentford, making 2 more curses go away. So, yeah, West Ham are running a lot of wrongs this season, even though the season has been sort of, I don't know, controversial. We all heard David Moyes chatter around the league or around West Ham fans, especially. Myself included, personally, I want him to stay until the summer and then find someone else because I think West Ham can progress beyond him. But yeah, that's neither here nor there because we're not going to talk about West Ham. We're going to talk about FPL mostly. We're also going to talk about our predictions for this next upcoming game week. And yeah, I'll just quickly go through all the scores that we have predicted and then you can comment in general about the game week and any matches that you're interested in. So first match, Brentford against Chelsea. We've both gone with a Chelsea win. I've gone 3-1 Chelsea. You've gone 2-1 Chelsea. Everton West Ham, it's a fixture between our two teams. That's obviously the main fixture for us to look forward to this weekend. But I've gone with a 1-1 result here. I think Everton is sort of a 1-1 team currently, it seems like. You've gone with a 2-1 Everton win, not surprisingly. Last time Everton and West Ham faced each other, it was a pretty easy win for Everton, so that might happen again at Goodison Park, but we'll see. Fulham Brighton, we've both gone with a Brighton win. 3-1 is your prediction, 2-1 is my prediction for Brighton. Newcastle Wolves, we both gone with a draw. I have 1-1, you have 2-2. Nottingham Forest against Liverpool, we both expect a big win for Liverpool. 3-0 for me, 3-1 for you. And sort of the inverse when it comes to Spurs Crystal Palace. I've gone 3-1 for Spurs, you've gone 3-0 for Spurs. So kind of the opposite of the Liverpool thing. Luton Aston Villa, I've gone 2-0 for Aston Villa, you gone 3-1 for Aston Villa, so 2-goal win for Aston Villa in both of our predictions. Burnley against Bournemouth, I go with a sneaky 1-0 win for Bournemouth, which is kind of surprising seeing as how I just trashed Burnley. I probably should have gone with a higher score for Bournemouth, but I don't know. Bournemouth seem like especially if Solanke is out, I think it's going to be difficult for them, but we'll see. Man City against Man United, I'm going with 4-1 Man City, you're going with 4-2 Man City, pretty even. And then Sheffield United against Arsenal, I'm going with a whopping 4-0 win for Arsenal because they're just in that great form, and you're going with 3-1 win for Arsenal as well. So apart from Everton West Ham, obviously, which is going to be the big clash this weekend for us two guys, what fixtures do you look forward to the most this weekend?
Obviously, City United,
Yeah.
Everton West Ham, Newcastle Wolves, I think could be really fun.
Mm.
Spurs, because I went double up with the Suns. Brentford Chelsea, I think it'd be interesting to see because Chelsea had a pretty decent win today. And yeah, I've liked what I've seen of Chelsea recently, even though it's kind of been up and down. Like, they still tick, like, yes. Nkunku constantly getting injured is starting to piss me off now because it's just so unlucky. And I think he's really the missing piece that they need right now.
Yeah.
It's good for Jackson to be getting some basic minutes and goals and stuff like that again because they desperately need him to be amongst the goals. So it'll be interesting to see just which Chelsea we get to see.
Yeah.
I think Brentford are just unfortunate currently that this is sort of the motion of the ocean. It's just been dog shit for them lately. I don't understand why. Mopai is still an annoying prick. Tony is still Tony, and yet they're not able to grind out anything. So unfortunately, I think this Chelsea side is good enough to sort of beat them, but could I see Brentford somehow getting a result here? Yes, because Chelsea
Yeah.
are so goddamn inconsistent. But I think just overall, you got to go with Chelsea, and especially after a sort of crushing late defeat as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I kind of agree with most of your picks. Newcastle Wolves especially is interesting. A little less interesting now for me, especially with Huang most likely being out for that game, because I think he could have scored a lot of points in that game on a lot of people's benches, but now he's just going to be benched and injured most likely for that game. So that's quite unfortunate. But I'm still looking forward to the game because I think both those teams are they're sort of fighting for the same spots in the table now. Wolves having a really good season compared to what we expected, and Newcastle having a really bad season compared to what most people expected. So yeah, I think that's an interesting game as well that you mentioned there. But let's move on to talk about some more games for the future and the future in terms of the game weeks coming up in FPL with the confirmed fixture ticker, because now with all the FA Cup results out of the way, we have confirmed Game Week 29 which teams are going to blank and which teams are going to play. So we basically have 4 fixtures, and that's Spurs against Fulham, Burnley against Brentford, Luton against Nottingham Forest, and West Ham against Aston Villa, which is not really the most enticing plate of teams when it comes to building a free hit team with just 4 fixtures, basically. You basically just have to pick the team that you think is going to win in each game, and then pick the players from that team, and then you'll have 11 players basically from that. Apart from that, we have the double game week, the small double game week in Game 28 with Bournemouth having the best fixtures out of the whole bunch, with really good fixtures both before and after Game Week 29. Which is going to be interesting how you're going to navigate that as someone who doesn't have free hits available. You need all the players that you can have for Game Week 29, but you also kind of want to have some Arsenal players, probably some City players and stuff for the future game weeks as well. So how are you going to deal with Bournemouth, and is it potentially really good for you that Solanke might be injured now, because he is like the biggest guy that you would need. So what are your plans with Sri Lanka and other Bournemouth assets potentially?
Yeah, I could always get rid of Haaland.
Yeah, I think that's a
Like,
viable strategy, to be honest. I think that's what I would do if I was in your
even
position.
though the motherfucker is gonna score like 9 goals in the next 4 games, but yeah,
I mean, Man United, I think is going to be good. I wouldn't sell him
hat
now.
trick,
Yeah,
hat trick at Anfield,
I would not sell him
hat
for this game
trick
week.
against Arsenal, own goal against Aston Villa. That's the
Nah,
prediction.
I just think you can survive game 28, 29, 30, and 31 without Holland, and then getting back for game 32, which I think is against Luton at home or something like that. So yeah, I think that's actually a viable strategy if you sell Holland for Sri Lanka and basically
But we just know that Haaland's gonna go ape shit, so no point.
Liverpool and Arsenal. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure. Yeah,
Yes.
we'll see.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh,
Depends how
Declan
depleted
Rice
Liverpool
needs
are.
to win the league, so I'm gonna say that Haaland's gonna do shit now and make everyone cry. No,
Nah, I still think Holland is a good pick. I'm gonna keep him myself, but
I
can
I
easily go
still
without him
think
for
that
those game
I
weeks.
need Declan Rice to win the league. So
Yeah, he's going to. So maybe I don't know. It depends how big of a club.
maybe. Well, that wow, your conviction just went out the window within two
No, it
seconds.
just depends on how big of a club Arsenal are. It's not up to Declan Rice because
Oi, oi,
obviously,
oi, oi, oi,
if
oi.
Man City had known what was good for them, they would have signed Declan Rice themselves and they would have been champions by now already. So their loss, I guess.
No.
But either way, game week 29, you have to still target players from these teams. You already have quite a bit of players from these teams. You already done a transfer this game week with De Bruyne going out for Son, which is something you did before De Bruyne had 4 assists in the cup on Tuesday. But obviously Son is going to be the most coveted player now for the future game weeks. You can see Spurs being second in the fixture ticker in terms of fixture difficulty because they have 5 fixtures. And Crystal Palace at home is really enticing this week as well. Aston Villa away is not the best for game 28, I guess. But then they have a fixture in game 29 against Fulham, which is a nice fixture, and then Luton and West Ham after that. So really good fixtures for Spurs players, and I think that's where you can gain an advantage already having. You have Pedroporo already, right? Yeah, you still have Pedroporo, and you have Richarlison, and now you have Son as well. So you've tripled up on Spurs. And personally, for example, I have 0 Spurs players, so that could be something to your advantage going forward. But looking at other potential options at play in Game of 29, where are you looking to target now that you have triple Spurs, you have Bowen, you have Watkins, you have sort of the main guys for Game of 29? Are you still looking to bring in Game of 29 players only, or are you just going to look in general with the best possible players, disregarding 29, now that you have basically like the 6, 7 guys that you want, especially for that game week?
Yeah, I mean, I could consider a Douglas Luiz or something, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really trust Aston Villa's defense in the next coming games.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't at all give a shit about Luton. So
Yeah, I mean,
like they're gonna concede in every fucking game. What are we meant to do with that?
game week 28, Alfie Doughty doesn't look too bad for you, I would say. Double game week and then Nottingham Forest at home in the game week 29 fixture. Yeah, I would do it personally, but I also sold out this past game week, so yeah, I've been
Oh,
burnt by it
why?
already. Because I'm free hitting in 29, so I'm gonna get him for 29 game week 29 anyway, and I'm getting Senesi for 28.
You're lying.
That's true,
You are
but I think
not.
actually,
You
if
oh Luton Town. Oh, we concede 5 goals a game. Ugh. Like, you're lying to
I
me.
think actually the way you can sort of finagle this a little bit, and also you have still Ariel and Dubravka who are no good now. I think getting Neto in as a goalkeeper could actually be beneficial for you with a double game week, and then you don't have to play him in game week 29. You can just sell Dubravka to get him, I guess, and you have Ariel and 29
When he
still.
concedes in both games, when am I meant to do that?
Sheffield United at home, Luton at home. You just chastised Luton for being bad, and you also said Sheffield United are the worst team in the league, so.
Score in both games against Bournemouth at home. Just watch it happen.
Okay, Mr. Pessimistic, you can do whatever you want.
I
This
I've been scored so badly by these double game week players who have been dog shit. So
yeah, I mean, a bad double game week doesn't mean that all double game weeks are bad. So
yes,
we'll see. But yeah, anyways, any transfer plans, any players that stand out to you from any of these teams? Obviously, you have triple up on Spurs. You can't really do anything with them.
Solanke, Solanke's one.
Yeah,
Um, Burnley, not really anyone. Fulham, not really anyone. Yeah, Doughty, I guess, in the Luton game. Awani, if you're ever gonna risk on anyone, but that's not gonna happen with all the strikers. West Ham, maybe like an Emerson, maybe Paquetá, Kudos, someone else to just join in on the fun. Antonio, if he's actually playing games from start.
wouldn't count on it.
Yep, Brentford. Ivan Toney seems to be like or Mopai actually. Both seem like viable options at this point. But Ivan Toney on
Also,
penalties.
cheeky little potential differential is Mbuemo, who might be back in
Yeah,
time for 29 especially, but maybe 28 as well.
but he was a bit penalty dependent during
A
his.
little bit. He had really good numbers in general, and I think Brentford actually looked better with him and no Tony rather than Tony and no Mbuemo, which is kind of interesting. I think. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
he's definitely someone that I think could be a differential, especially on a free hit for game 29 if he's ready to play that game week. But yeah, obviously buying him against Arsenal away probably not the best idea. So remains to be seen if that's a possibility in game week 29. And also you have Pinnock, who is most likely going to be back for game week 30, which is sort of the opposite of what you want, but he could be making a quick recovery and be back for 29. So I think that's why you sort of should just wait with him until the end, because defenders wise, apart from Doughty that I mentioned, I don't think there are any really good game 29 players you can bring in, because West Ham and Aston Villa play each other. Aston Villa have conceded a lot of goals lately. Maybe Emerson, like you said, maybe he has a decent game there. And you can bring him against Burnley at home in game 28. You do want to sell Estepina, for example, so that could be an option, I guess. But other than that, I can't really see any other defenders that are really good. Maybe Regulon on actually game week 29, but you wouldn't bring him in for game 28 or game 27 either. So it could just be a straight up Pinnock to Regulon transfer if Pinnock is still out by that point. So I think that might be something that you have to look into. But looking apart from game week 29 playing teams, you obviously have the likes of Arsenal, who do have that City matchup. But apart from that, Sheffield United away in game week 27, Brentford at home in game week 28, Luton at home in game week 31. Um, Bukayo Saka, is he still potentially someone in
Yeah,
your
of course.
plans? Yeah?
Fuck Palmer. Let's bring him back.
I think Palmer is fantastic as well for the fixtures, if you look at his fixtures. But yeah,
Fuck
any
Richarlison. Let's run it back. Actually, that's kind of what I have to do, to be honest.
Richarlison to Saka
Yeah.
after game week 29?
Yeah.
Yeah, for game week 31 probably.
No.
No?
This week, no. Can I even
Maybe.
afford that? I don't even think so.
I don't know. Would have to check. You have 1 million in the bank, right?
Yep.
Don't think that's enough to get Saka from any of the
Fuck you
players.
then.
But yeah, Arsenal in general, I just also want to highlight the expected numbers as well. 16.7 expected goals and 1.88 expected goals conceded. That's by far the best sort of tally for 6 matches. That's 6 matches worth of data, which is crazy. They've just been amazing, Arsenal, both going forward and defensive wise. But you do have Gabriel, at least, with your defensive points. With someone potentially, speaking of goalkeepers, you could also potentially go with someone like David Raya. If you're not really that enthused about Neto, then maybe Raya would be a good option for both before and after Game Week 29, since you already have Areola. Those are some other players that you could potentially look into getting. It depends how happy you are with Areola and Dubravka as a duo, because it hasn't really worked out so far. What do you feel about goalkeepers in general and goalkeeper transfers? Is that something that you would potentially do, or would you just stick it out with the players that you do have in goalkeeper positions? No comment.
No comment because fucking goalkeepers suck, man.
Yeah, so just stick the course, I guess. Areola,
Yeah,
Dubravka.
I like the look of Neto's fucking 4 home games, but yeah,
Yeah,
that might be interesting. But Everton always seems to be like a crazy shoot-off game.
yeah,
I also think Sheffield United and Luton will try to. This is the sort of
try to.
matchup that they can try to win, but obviously won't. But if they try to win, they will score. So, ugh. But I could still
Uh,
grab Neto instead of one of those assholes because they just keep conceding.
yeah, and you want both Sheffield United and especially Luton to lose as well.
Yeah.
With Everton's relegation scrap, so it'll be easy to root for Bournemouth as well. When it comes to midfielders from Bournemouth, I don't really feel any of those guys are interesting. Tavernier has sort of dropped off in form. Clayford, I guess, is playing quite regularly, but then you have Sinistera, you have Semenyo, who's listed as a
None
forward
of them
anyway.
have been consistent enough
Yeah,
to warrant that.
Dango Atara. They have so many wingers in general. They have to loan out Brooks, who I think is a pretty good player. So midfielders, I wouldn't be too interested in, but Neto, someone like Senesi in defense, even though he has eight yellow cards, so he might get suspended and stuff. He's interesting, and then Solanke is interesting, especially for Bournemouth, I think. But yeah, so your plan for the next few game weeks, you have Son for game 27. Game 28, any Solanke you would probably get for game 28. And then game 29, you would just do whatever seems to fit that week, I guess, if you want to play it straight up without any hits. But knowing you, I think you're going to take a couple hits for a couple players. But we'll see what happens in those games.
We will see.
Anything else that stands out to you when it comes to the fixture ticker, or especially the game weeks after game 29? Because we've been so focused now on game 26 through game 29 that we haven't really focused too much on game 30 and beyond. Because obviously you don't have a wildcard. A lot of other people will either dead end their team into game 29 and then wildcard in game 30. Some people will wildcard in game 30 regardless. And we have double game week 34 coming up as well, which you also have to navigate without the chips, apart from bench boost, which you still have. So game week 30 and 31, looking at those fixtures in particular, any players that you want to jump on from that point on, you think? Something like Chelsea, Burnley at home, Man United at home. They have some pretty good fixtures after that. Spurs, you already have 3 players, so that's good for you with Spurs going forward after that. Bournemouth as well, buying like the likes of Solanke and Neto could be a long-term investment because they have pretty good fixtures beyond that as well, and might double in game 34 as well now. So yeah, anyone that tickles your fancy out of those teams?
Yeah, Saka.
Yeah,
Saka, obviously, Sony and Richarlison look good, and Petroporo even looks good in these sort of games. So,
yeah,
yeah, I'm pretty happy with the current team. If Nkunku ever gets fit, he'll go straight into the team, but I don't think I trust Chelsea defense too much. And yeah, I think this sort of crop of players that I currently have and building towards is perfectly fine. I don't think there's anyone that extremely stands out. If I were to double up on Arsenal, I don't think I'd double up on their defense. I think I'd bring Martin Odegaard in.
yeah. So you rate Odegaard over Martinelli currently?
I think so.
Yeah,
Um, I think
in
so.
terms of FPL, obviously.
I think the thing about Martinelli is when he's good, it's like it pours up points, but with Martin Odegaard is sort of way more consistent play. So
Yeah,
I'd pick the more consistent player than the boom or bust player.
yeah. What about the Egyptian king Mo Salah? If you're selling Haaland in game 28 or game 29, you probably have enough money for Salah.
Once I hear Salah's in the clear, I am max Exodus my whole entire team.
He's clear for game 28 against Man City before the blank game 29. Are you getting
Nah.
Salah? No.
He'll score a penalty
Maybe.
and then another
He
one
has scored against City
and,
before. He's a
and
big,
then another one. So
yeah.
if that fucking happens, I'm there.
He's a big game player, so yeah, he could show up against Man City once again and prove that he's one of the greatest Premier League players of all time. Probably.
Yes.
But we usually do the weekly wildcard draft segment at this point, but I haven't done a weekly wildcard draft yet. I wanted to wait until the matches in the FA Cup were resolved so we can have a clearer picture of the chip strategy and stuff. But that will be coming up tomorrow or today, I guess, the same day as this podcast is coming up. I'll have a double upload on Thursday with the weekly wildcard draft there as well. So if you're looking forward to that, you can see that video on Thursday as well. But let's move on to the current plans for you in Game 27. And like we mentioned already, you've done your transfer pretty early. De Bruyne to Son. Any regrets about that after seeing De Bruyne get four assists in the cup and then playing 90 minutes as well in the cup against Luton? Any regrets about the move?
Yes, yes and no. I think long term it's fine that I went with Son, but it's annoying that De Bruyne was so bad in the matches that we did have him. So yeah,
Yeah, he has been a frustrating player, especially seeing as he got those four assists against Luton. He got that goal and assist against Copenhagen in the Champions League as well. So he has been performing. He has just not been playing in the league
yeah,
and being prioritized for the other competitions, which is
fair
interesting.
enough, I guess.
I'm personally contemplating the same transfer as well, De Bruyne to Son, or potentially now that Huang is injured, maybe I just do Huang to Palmer instead, because that's probably more feasible for me. And I also kind of want to keep De Bruyne myself, because I think De Bruyne against Man United, he's had that huge game where he had like 3 assists, I think, against Man United before. So I think City really step up in those games. So I think he is still someone who could bite you in the ass, but I think also Son is a nice consolation price, if not a reward or an upgrade from De Bruyne, because Crystal Palace at home is looking really good for him, and he has pretty good history against Crystal Palace as well. So I quite like the transfer. Obviously, for you, it's more urgent to get Gaming 29 players. Son plays in 29, De Bruyne does not, so it makes a lot of sense in that perspective for you. You also have some interesting benching decisions. Firstly, you have the defender situation, which is kind of uneven. Estepinian, who knows if he's going to start or not. Pedro Porro, who knows if he's going to be ready to play or not. I think actually it's looking less likely now that the Porro is going to be ready to play for this game week. So could you potentially do a -4 in defense as well? Is that something that you would consider? Because Estepinian is unsure, Porro is unsure, Taylor plays for Burnley, and Pinnock is injured. Is that something you could move towards, do you think, on a -4? Or do you think you want to just hope and pray that Estepinian finally starts and then Porro can potentially start, or you get Taylor against Bournemouth as a backup? Like, what are you thinking with the defenders?
Yeah, I think I could potentially do a Pinnock out move or a Stupinian for someone else, which could eventually help me afford um, Mr. Saka. So yeah, that just sort of depends on which player I don't believe will be able to come back in time and stuff. And I think Pinnock honestly might be the one I have to move on, considering the fact that um yeah,
Yeah, he's
the
most
fact that
likely
Pinnock
out.
is out until the end of March, so
Yeah.
it's not great.
Yeah. And yeah, we just talked about a couple defensive picks potentially. Any defenders that would stand out to you in Gaming 27 and going forward, especially looking at Gaming 27 and players
I mean,
playing
I
Gaming
guess
29,
it's a
for example.
Bournemouth player if I want to be like that.
Yeah, I mean they do have that's the upside, of course, that they do have 3 fixtures in the next 3 game weeks. They just have 2 of them in 28 rather than 1 of them in 29. So I think you could look at it that way as well. Like, yes, you won't field 11 players potentially in Game 29 if you buy a Bournemouth player, but you'll get the same amount of fixtures, and that's at the end of the day, that's what you want to get basically. Like, it doesn't really matter when they get those fixtures as long as they get the same amount of fixtures. So yeah, I think someone like Senesi could be interesting, but he's also on that suspension tightrope, so maybe you would be a bit wary about that as well. Maybe someone like Herkus is if Lloyd Kelly is out with an injury for a while now. I think Herkus is going to be. You saw his shot against Man City as well. Pretty attacking player. He could be a really nice differential for you as well, potentially. Or just go with Senesi and assume that he's going to survive these next 2 games without getting 2 yellow cards, I guess. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good option for you, where you don't really have to worry too much about Game 29 and just have a player that plays 3 matches in the next 3 game weeks. I think that's a viable strategy as well. If someone watching is like you, Kevin, and don't have a free hit or are not going to use their free hit in Game 29, perfectly viable to do a Bournemouth player instead and get the same amount of fixtures basically. You also have some benching decisions this week. Goalkeeper, I guess, is sort of always a decision, Dubravka or Oriola. I assumed you would go with Dubravka just to back your own Everton squad, and I thought the same with Bowen compared to all the other attackers, basically the 4 players you have in midfield and forwards in total. Oriola and Bowen, are those players likely to be benched for you, or are you looking to play one of them or both of them, or what's your thinking with those 2 guys?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, that might be the best thing because with everyone else, they're playing home games, and you gotta back the home form, I guess. So yeah, I think that's what I would do.
So who, if you were to start Bowen, who would be the most likely to drop out then out of your attackers?
Tony, maybe.
Yeah, Tony against
Yeah,
Chelsea.
yeah. Because last time I benched Palmer didn't go well. Quite recently, when I benched Palmer, it went great. So,
Yeah,
but um, yeah, I think it's a tough one, but I think I'd have to go with Ivan Toney, or if I hear any other news prior to anything, then sure. But other than that, I think this is as optimal. You want Richarlison and Son against
yeah, Palace.
Palace. You want Foden and Haaland, who are notoriously known for showing up in the game against Man United. You want Watkins away against Luton. You want Palmer because he's been consistent all year. Porro, you probably would want to start. If he starts, great. Stupinyan's looking like he's gonna have to start, so good. Gabriel away against Sheffield United, of course. And then Dubravka, I think, is the better shout because I think Everton at home will be good enough to score a goal, and then that kind of makes Areola completely useless. I
Yeah,
don't feel that good about benching Bowen, though.
yeah. You could do with some news about Foden being dropped out or something like that potentially. If you get that before deadline, but yeah, Bowen. It's hard to bench him, but at the same time, benching good players is at least the best when it's. I guess it could go both ways. If he scores a brace, it would suck even more considering he's playing Everton. But yeah, I think Bowen is probably who I would bench myself as well if I was in your position. But yeah, it's a tough decision for sure. Another potentially tough decision. You did mention both Spurs and Man City players being really good this game week. Obviously, you've doubled up with both those teams in attack. So where do you think you would go with captaincy? Is it still Haaland 100%, or are you thinking potentially about Son or Richarlison even for captaincy?
It's tough. It's really tough. I think it's between Haaland and Son, to be honest, and
Yeah,
I have to make a decision from there. Who do I feel is the more player on it? I guess Haaland, because he's been consistently back and stuff, but um, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to stick with Haaland,
yeah.
especially at home against
Man United. He
yeah,
scored a hat trick against Man
yeah,
United before. I think Man United is his favorite team to play against, isn't it so far? Like he's scored against every single Premier League team he's faced. But I think Man
yeah.
United is the team that he scored the most against. So yeah, I think that's a great fixture for him personally as well. But Son against Palace also really nice. I think Richarlison is also. I'm interested to see who's going to score the most out of Richarlison and Son, with Richie playing as a striker and Son playing out wide, because Son has been sort of better as a striker than as a winger in terms of FPL points. So yeah, it's an interesting call there as well. But I think Haaland is the standout option for captaincy, in my opinion at least. Let's move on to Kimo and his current plans. A little bit of a different team to you. A lot of the same players as well, or a couple of the same players, but obviously very different tactics going into Game 29 with a free hit for Kimo in mind, I would assume. So I have listed three potential transfers for Kimo here. One of them is just selling Hwang Hee-chan immediately. He doesn't have enough money for Son, but he does have enough money for Richarlison. You've talked about how important it is to have Spurs players. At the same time, no Gabriel in defense. Is it finally time for Kimo to just rectify that mistake and get him in for someone like Ake, plays Man United, who usually scoring a City at least, and then City have Liverpool and Arsenal and stuff after that? Or would he just go with a goalkeeper transfer, because he has even worse goalkeepers than you, with Turner, who doesn't even play, and then Areola, who is basically forced to play every single game week? Does he just do Turner to Neto, who plays Burnley away, and then those two home fixtures to Sheffield United and Luton? I think all three potential transfers are viable, potentially even doing a -4 to do two of them. But out of those three transfer possibilities, what stands out to you as the best potential way forward for Kimo's team, do you think?
I think you should do Turner to Neto and possibly, yeah, Richarlison in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Then
think his best strategy is to actually go -4.
But if you bring in Richarlison for Hwang, you obviously need to sub in Richarlison, and you sort of get the same problem that you have, except Kimo has Gordon and
Solanke,
Solanke. So Solanke
yeah.
benched against Burnley. I mean, if he's fit to play against Burnley, would you bench Solanke?
No, of course not.
No.
I would then potentially just bench Palmer.
Would you? -4 for Richarlison to bench Palmer?
I mean, it's you're looking beyond next game week as well, right? With Richarlison and Neto,
Yeah, but
which
that's
I
why you
think
can
is.
save it.
I mean, I guess you could save it with, but it's just that Crystal Palace at home is such a good game as well.
Yeah, but I think Brentford away is a pretty good game, seeing West Ham score
Yeah,
4
of
goals
course.
against them. So,
Yeah, of course. So I think the priority should be Neto. I think
yeah.
Gabriel. I think Gabriel works as well, but I think his
Could also do
defense
concept to
is.
Gabriel for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
Potentially bench Trippier, or I don't know who you prefer out of Trippier and Ake as a starter, or
I think
Brandweight
neither.
for that matter.
I don't neither. None of them. I think all of them will concede. So
So maybe Gabriel in then for Konsa, and then
yeah,
start him,
yeah. I
and then
think that
Neto.
could also work. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, all three transfers are pretty decent in general. Just remains to be seen what Kimo wants to do. I think he might even have enough money to do to Madison in rather than Charleston, because I know Kimo's a huge fan of Madison, so maybe he wants to do that instead. If he wants to bench one of the guys, that's just a question. So Gordon is not someone that you would bench this game week. You would still play him against Wolves at home.
Yeah.
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 Rather than Palmer
It's the man of the minute for them. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that as well. I think it's difficult, especially I think a lot of people will struggle between Gordon against Wolves at home or Bowen against Everton away. And I think there as well. I think actually that might be the case for the Manager of the Week. You could just jump to that actually. Yeah, that's actually the dilemma for the Manager of the Week with Gordon playing at Wolves at home. You also have Tony against Chelsea at home. Sort of the same with you. Bowen versus Tony, Bowen versus Gordon. The same sort of conundrum here as well. Before the Manager of the Week, Wesley Epi, we have, or I have, basically said, could either do Stones to Gabriel, sort of the same move that I said for Kimo, except it's Stones rather than Ake. Trippier to Gabriel, you could also do. Downgrade Trippier, get some money for Money in the Bank. And downgrading Trippier to Gabriel might give the chance to do Gordon to Richarlison as well, if you want to do that. That is a possibility. So any transfers that stand out to you in this scenario? What about the team in general? Any picks that you would potentially get rid of? Because personally, I don't really see that many red flags in this team, to be honest. I don't really see that many players that I would 100% want to sell, basically. But
No, I think it's perfectly fine. It's just a question of maybe Tony to Solanke if that's what you want to do, or if you're going to eventually get rid of Haaland. But uh, other than that, I think it's perfectly viable. But it seems like a waste. So I would maybe do Stones to Gabriel.
yeah,
Then
doubly
you
on
get
one
that
optional
extra,
defense.
yeah. Then you get that sort of extra parachute for 29.
Yeah.
Well, or are Arsenal playing in 29 now?
No, they're not playing 29,
No,
but free hit
they
29 would
have,
probably be the best
yeah, and
decision for this
also
team.
just generally speaking, having Arsenal defense is worth it. So yeah,
Because this manager also, most people have used triple captain and not bench boost, but this manager has done bench boost already, which sort of lessens the appeal of Game 37, which is going to be the big double game week where a lot of people will use their bench boost, but without a bench boost in hand, that might be make it more viable to do free at 29 as well. And yeah, I think the strategy here is free at 29 and then use wildcard whenever it really suits you, basically. But yeah, I think the shot that you had for Solanke is also potentially a good option. If you are free hitting in 29, you could just sell Tony and free hit him back in game 29 and have Solanke for the double game week in 28 without sacrificing either Watkins or Haaland. So I think that's actually a really good shout if Solanke is ready to play and stuff, because Tony is more expensive than Solanke, so that should be easy to do as well. Obviously, 2 free transfers, you never want to burn a transfer, so you obviously would have to do 1 transfer, but at least. But yeah, saving the two transfers for future game weeks is also never a bad idea when your team is looking pretty good, because you never know what's going to happen with injuries and stuff. Maybe you get 2 injuries for next week, and then you're stuck with just one free transfer when you want to sub out 2 players, for example. So always nice to save the 2 free transfers if you can, but there are a lot of different moves that you could do also to improve your team. So I think it's an interesting team going forward for this game week. But Gabriel in seems like a pretty obvious move for me, whether it's for Stones or Trippier or for Dawson, for example. And yeah, potentially look at a Spurs midfielder if you can as well. But yeah. Lastly, on this team, I also want to ask you about captaincy. We've talked about Haaland versus Son. Does it change when it's Haaland versus Saka? Saka and Sheffield United away. Sheffield United have been awful. I predicted 4-0 for Arsenal in this game as well. Is Saka more tempting to you than Son or Richarlison, or is it still Haaland?
I think it's still Haaland,
Yeah.
to be honest. Yeah.
So what do you think about Saka versus the Spurs guys?
Perfect, like perfectly fine, and I think is just as good of an option as those two, but it's still away at the end of the day, and all this type of stuff. I still think expect them to win, but I think that home, you know, sort of good feeling to have before a game is going to be better because they're simply playing at home.
Yeah.
But we've also seen um, Spurs completely whiff it at home like they did against Wolves. So, anything goes, but I still think I would rank it probably like this. Haaland number one, Son number two, Saka number three, and Richarlison number four.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think that's also around the consensus as well in general for captaincy this week, especially after Haaland's 5-goal haul. Because I think before Haaland scored all those goals against Luton, it was pretty 50-50 when it comes to polls and stuff that I've seen on FPL Twitter and stuff.
Nah, I would have still
Yeah,
captained
I was still on Haaland captain before that as well myself. But yeah, I think that just cemented it, the fact that he scored so many goals against Luton. Yeah, that's basically it for the FPL Skull podcast for this week. I want to play Final Fantasy Rebirth, which is ready and loaded on my PlayStation. You want to play that as well pretty soon as you can as well. So let's just wrap it up, and yeah, you have it ready already. So with that in mind, as always, this podcast is ended with you having the last word. So what do you want to say as your last word for this podcast, Kevin? And I sort of have a feeling what you're going to say.
Happy Final Fantasy Day. I think we're going to have a good time playing the shit out of that. Apparently, it takes 200 hours to complete, and I look forward to that journey. Fuck the Premier League, because we also were able to get some points back to Everton. So, you know what? It's just positive notes, but fuck Premier League.
Bye-bye.